You mentioned you think there are legitimate parts of the Black Lives Matter movement. I think you touched on one, which was police brutality, the state acting effectively as judge, jury, executioner for these people. I mean, is there any other part of it you think is legitimate?
I think, by the way, also we've got to be very careful about this. I've been going to America for about 20 years. I've always thought, I think, like every outsider who looks at America, that gosh, do they have deep problems? I mean, every country does. They do have they have a racial problem that I would submit we certainly don't have in the same manner, and I don't think we have the same ferocity in a country like Britain. And there's lots of historical reasons for that. I don't like the transplanting of a particular form of racial grievance in one country to another country. I think it's an imperfect match to lay specific American problems on a country like Britain. And I think it does us a disservice. But I think it's also important that people have a correct view of what actually is happening in America. And what is not happening is, as a lot of people have been presenting it, that the police are just allowed to kill black people. And I'm not exaggerating this. A prominent black politician in the States was quoted not long after the Minnesota incident saying, our children are not safe walking in the streets. They don't know when they'll be gunned down by a police officer. This is a deep disservice to American police officers. I hold no special love or admiration. I have no special connection with the American police force. They operate in the most highly weaponized country in the world. They never know when they pull over a car whether the person is going to reach into a glove compartment and have a gun. They have far bigger, for all sorts of historical reasons we can go into, they all have specific issues surrounding the Second Amendment, which means that they have a highly militarized citizenry, which means that they have a highly weaponized police force. There are something like 10 million interactions a year between the general public and the police in America. And I think, as my friend Sam Harris said in a very, very measured and intelligent podcast, which he released a couple of weeks after Minnesota, as he said, this country cannot be on the precipice that every single one of those 10 million interactions every year goes well. And I fear that there has been a perception that's been pumped out there about what is happening with American policing, which is actually skirting around being able to address the problems that have been highlighted, and is going to this unbelievably wide attack on American policing as a whole. Has already turned into massive uptick in gun ownership. The sales figures show this, and anecdotally, I have liberal friends in America who now are buying guns for the first time. A friend told me the other day that she tried to get hold of somebody to teach her how to use a gun, and the answer machine message at the gun school said, don't even try to get an appointment with us before the end of November. This isn't good news. But it's also the case, this is happening, not because of some imaginary...
So Douglas there giving his opinion, opining on the state of gun ownership in the United States of America, what is happening with the police force in America, the BLM mantra that police basically get up in every day when they go to work, and they're out there to shoot people of color, shoot black people, shoot brown people, shoot anybody except white people, when the statistics show absolutely the opposite, that more whites are killed than blacks, and more police officers are killed in the line of duty than blacks. Now, any death is a tragedy, but you've got to take a look at every single aspect of every act that's committed. Just like remember the hands up, don't shoot, hands up, don't shoot. That was a complete farce, but it was peddled by the mainstream media and went worldwide till it was proven. It took a court case. Even now there's people that still believe in, hands up, don't shoot, hands up, don't shoot. Now, one thing about Douglas, I may have misunderstood him. I'm not really sure, But I think he sort of chose his words a little bit wiser when he said he has no affinity or any love for the American police force. I think I have tremendous love, tremendous respect, tremendous admiration for the men and women in blue every single freaking day, putting their lives on the line, young, middle age, elderly, whatever they are in the police age, you know what I'm talking about. Split second decision, they've got to make life and death decisions. Now, the other thing, and I'll leave it at this, is that when Doug was saying that the proliferation of gun sales in America, he mentioned a friend of his getting a gun, wanted to get some training. It was going to take a long time for her to get the training. But I think Douglas was intimating that gun ownership, gun sales, the proliferation of guns in America is a bad thing. I completely disagree with Douglas if that's his position. What I'm going to try to do is find out. I haven't seen too many videos of Douglas talking about the Second Amendment for or against. I'm going to do some research, see if I can find some, but we're going to get back to Douglas's interview just in the next few seconds. But before we do so, we just want to let you know this is what we have on tap here today for you folks today. Douglas Murray with interview with Political Joe on the Dr. Nasir Shaikh Show. I'm your host, Dr. Nasir, where I give you my political prescription from my political perspective of what happens when everything collides. Social media, religion, culture, politics, government, Second Amendment, First Amendment. Let's get back more of the interview with Doug Murray.
Here in the heads of American people, but because you see, for instance, in New York, a doubling, I think it was, of gun crime every week through July, August. You see civil disobedience, the police retreating. You see, for instance, look what happens when the police retreat in Portland, Oregon. You see the citizenry, and by the way, this is in a 92% white city, so we're not really talking about a sort of, as it were, a racialized version here. This is just a people whipped up into behaving reprehensibly situation, irrespective of skin color. In Portland, Oregon, you see people hauling motorists out of their cars and beating them in the head until they're unconscious, finding an old woman in the street and assaulting her. This is what happens when the police retreat in Portland, Oregon. You get vigilantes, you get fascists, militarized fascists, dressed up and pretending that they are anti-fascists and calling themselves.
Which is why, Douglas, the citizenry, the good people, that's why they need to have a gun to protect themselves in a situation, in a case like that.
Erroneously Antifa. You see what happened in Chicago a couple of weeks ago when one of the major shopping areas of the city is broken into and looted, not by small fringes, but by vast numbers of people. That's what happens when the police retreat. So the people who say we could solve all of our societal problems by not having police,
idiots,
must be children. Must be children. They cannot possibly be adults who know what happened.
Also, if from the perspective of the left in the UK, for years the argument has been we should fund the police.
Yes. The elements of the Labour Party in the UK switched on a dime from their usual thing, which is Tory government cuts mean that the police are underfunded, onto defund the police. It's not my job to explain the consistency of the sections of the Labour Party, but I find that one amazing.
Would you describe this government as a Conservative government?
In name, yes. And in lots of their actions, yes. However, to a great extent, I think the current government is I say this with a water metaphor, positively laughing at my feet. It's adrift. It's adrift. It's pulled and pushed around on the waves of the time. Now,
let's keep going.
Keep going, Douglas. Keep going.
Exploit this metaphor till you're drowning in it.
God, he's good.
I'll tell you what I think happened. I think Boris Johnson came in. He's got lots of very good instincts. He's a liberal conservative, and he came with lots of good instincts. I think he was knocked sideways by the COVID issue, and I think then his personal health obviously has knocked him badly. I think it's taken him a lot longer to recover than anyone wanted to admit. I think we're starting to get the old Boris back, but it may not be completely what he was. I'd like to think it will be, but it's definitely taken longer than anyone thought. A criticism of that is that's what government is like. I wrote this in one of the papers the other day. This is what government's always like. If you'd said to Tony Blair in 1997, you may think you're going to do X, Y, and Z, but in fact you'll be drawn into a load of wars in the Middle East. I think Tony Blair would have said, how does that happen? So government is always like this. You come in expecting to do a set of things, and then events happen, and you're bashed around, and you have to find a way through it. So I don't think we can have endless sympathy for any government flailing. You should expect to face problems and unforeseen circumstances. This is especially unforeseen. My concern about it is that it seems that the inclinations that would normally make conservative government behave in a certain way seem to be absent. The obvious one is...
Here's an example,
that
Doug.
the answer to everything is more spending. That's traditionally not been a conservative answer. Conservatives tend to favour fiscal prudence over fiscal irresponsibility. But the justification for that obviously is we're in highly unusual times. I'm simply, on that basis, I'm very concerned that we have run up a debt that's unknown in peacetime for a pandemic that now appears not to be as serious as we thought at the beginning. A virus that isn't as lethal as we originally feared, and which may well happen again. I mean, we've had 3 such viruses from China in the last decade. Do we run up World War II levels of spending each time this happens? I don't see how we can. And I think we probably said when we last spoke, virtually, the worry in all of this is that this is just some kind of prelude, and the main event's coming.
Well, we'll stop the interview there. I just wanted to go over a couple of points that Douglas made. Boy, was Douglas right about the excessive spending levels that were going on in COVID. And the government's just spending like crazy. The debt rising by the trillions. And he sort of intimated there that that's something that we're going to be able to continue. And if you take a look right now, fast forward 2-3 years from when the time this interview was taken, Douglas has been proven right, because look at what has happened to the economies of the world, let alone the United States, Great Britain, and some of the other Western democracies, as well. It's been unbelievable with the inflation, with the high rise in every single thing, from food items to gas to energy to clothing to, you name it, cars, airline tickets, gas, oil, everything, sky high, up tens of percents, inflation nearly hitting double digits. It's sort of being, coming down, but very, very slowly. The other thing Doug mentioned was the fact that, COVID, now this is back then, and I think, a lot of people swallowed, or a lot of people heeded that this was going to be such an absolutely, and let's not forget, there were deaths across the world. There's no doubt about that. Millions of people died. But the doom and gloom that they were basically saying that was going to happen, some people were saying that, 50% of the world's population is going to die. Whole swaths of countries and areas are going to be completely decimated. The death toll numbers that were coming out of the CDC and the graphs that were being displayed, it was like this was Armageddon. This was basically, coming the day of judgment. And those things never even materialized, not even close, folks, not even close. Devastating, yes. Global catastrophe, I guess you could say so. But in terms of the end of humanity or the near extinction of humanity, not really. Anyways, folks, we appreciate you taking the time to watch. You've been watching the Dr. Nasir Shaikh Show. I've been your host, Dr. Nasir. If you've been done so already, subscribe to the channel if we've earned it. Like, share, and follow us. Let us know what you think. Follow some of our other video. Their links are above and below in our video list on the page. My final thought is, when you're right, and when you're left, you're wrong. Until next time, folks, take care and stay safe.